start with you, Shay. What was your first job in the movie industry?
My first job in the movie industry. I mean, like one I got paid for, or just a job. I think my first I was an intern for Richard Linklater back in the day when I lived in Austin, before I moved to LA. So I think that was like technically my first like job. I mean, obviously I didn't get paid for it. It was an unpaid internship, but I was literally working with Richard Linklater, you know. So that was cool.
Julian, to you?
Yeah, I mean, I, I, as part of attending Emerson College, I did the LA program here in LA, and I interned at Universal Pictures for a semester. And that was kind of like, I regarded it as sort of being a mole in the system and just sort of seeing how people talked about directors and scripts and just wanting to get that sense of just how the conversation happens from the industry side. It was really valuable for me.
Shay, to you first. God's Country, it follows a grieving college professor confronts two hunters she catches trespassing on her property. She's drawn into escalating battle of wills within the catastrophic consequences. What kind of inspired this project here?
Well, I mean, the project is an adaptation of a short story called Winter's Light that Julian has a history with and is very familiar with. And then once the idea came to change the character, the original character was a white man, an older white man, and then the idea came to change the character to a 40-something black woman. So for me, and my own personal experiences, and also just my manifesto and my mission statement of just wanting to like center people, like marginalized people, or people who don't normally get centered in genre storytelling or in westerns, like a woman or black woman, a woman of color. That because I'm a big fan of I grew up watching westerns. I'm a big fan of westerns. I've written them. So the idea of like putting someone that I can identify with in that role and seeing how that changes the chemistry of the film, that's what sparked me, and that's what inspired the story and the work for me.
Yeah, and like I think the spark of it was the understanding that if that change gets made, all of the subtext of the story changes, and now there's all kinds of things that we get to talk about that aren't present if it's three white guys talking to each other. And that's why we wanted to do it. We wanted to talk about things that we were feeling really galvanized to engage with.
Julian, what kind of made you want to get behind the camera and kind of really make this your first feature film?
Well, I mean, I've been, I kind of realized pretty young in like seventh grade or so that this is what I wanted to do with my life. So it's been a 23-year wait to finally get a feature film out there. But I have been doing shorts for, as long as I can remember. I did some what I'll generously call feature length projects in in high school, just to kind of experiment and learn the craft. And then I majored in film. I went, Shay and I both went to the American Film Institute at different times. But it's really the thing that keeps me fascinated and engaged with the medium is every single scene is its own puzzle. And I love the puzzle aspect. I love, okay, here's what we want to do. These are the pieces that we have. How do we use these pieces to make this say what we're trying to say? And that applies all throughout the process. That was how we worked with the script. Like we knew what we wanted to engage with, but we had no idea how we were going to engage. It was a long, long process. We worked on it for 2 years before we showed it to anybody. And then of course it goes into the prep and every scene of the shoot. And then of course the edit, like music, the whole process is an endless series of puzzles. And that's what I find so satisfying.
Yeah, Julian, follow up to you. You utilize this gorgeous, beautiful backdrop, and it's basically, in my opinion, its own character throughout the entirety of the film. And I think a very pivotal piece of the puzzle. How important was it for you to engulf us in this world outside of these characters?
I mean, I think for Shay and I, it was really important to it is ultimately quite a subjective film. The whole project of the movie, I think we would say, is to put the audience squarely with this character and experiencing what she's experiencing. And all of our choices were based on that. And she's in every scene, But we also wanted to get a sense and let the audience understand that this is actually a real and complex world like the one we actually live in. I hope it doesn't feel like a movie world. I hope it feels like, you know, you can recognize the types. And that's actually what took us so much time writing the script, was we wanted the film to feel like all of these iceberg tips, you know, where you can take one look and be like, I understand. I don't need there to be a monologue about the backstory. I can actually just see through the casting and the design and all that stuff what this is. I think the ultimate for me would be a movie where you know what it's about, you know what it's talking about, but no one ever says it. It's purely felt. That was the goal for us. Shay, I'm sure you have a take on this as well, but
what about the landscape?
Was that the question?
Yeah, I'm like, yeah. I'll make sure I'm like answering the question directly. You're talking about the landscape and it's like its relevancy in the film.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, for me specifically, like in my experience, you know, being from mostly urban areas, like when you're out in the Mountain West, I mean, for me, it's like there's feelings of isolation, there's feelings of displacement. It's treacherous, you know what I mean? It really like amplifies the survival element of the film from all sides. It's like we're all out here just trying to survive, and even like ideals like race and gender and all these issues that we've been dealing with become a little bit more insignificant. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, at our base instinct, it's about survival. And if anything, it feeds into those issues. Like it doesn't become as black and white. It becomes really gray.
Yeah, and I think the landscape is what makes the audience aware of the kind of existential nature of the story. You know, tiny human beings in this huge landscape, that it makes it clear that none of this on a human to human level matters at all. And yet it matters so much to the people involved. And that kind of perspective was an important thing to hold on to, I think.
Shay, to you, Thandiwe Newton, she is just breathtaking in this film. I've seen her in so many things, and first off, it's amazing to see her in the forefront of a film like this. But what kind of made you guys say she's our Sandra?
Oh, when you meet her, like when we first met her, I think Julian had a conversation with her, you know, before I officially met her. And when you meet her, you instantly see that she embodies a lot of the qualities, and you wouldn't think this, but she embodies a lot of the qualities that the character has. And she's always looking to explore. She's always looking to challenge herself. And a lot of the things that we were thinking about the character when we were crafting and writing the character, she had already verbally spoke these things in interviews before we even met her, like wanting to play characters that make mistakes, you know what I mean, that are not perfect, you know what I mean. And so that, you know, Thandiwe being who she is, she's a big star, but wanting to challenge herself and get into the muck, you get that from the moment you talk to her, just knowing who she is. So for me, like, she was right from the moment that I met her and she opened her mouth and started talking.
Yeah, and if I can just chime in on that too, the character is a tricky role. It's not, you have to believe a lot of things to be true about her without any question. You know, if you're sitting there going, well, I don't know, you know, for example, she's a college professor, you have to believe that she's somebody's favorite teacher, you know? But then she's got these other sides of her as well. She's so tough and so resilient and also brave. She does things in the movie that I think a lot of audience members wouldn't do. But she is so committed, this character. So it needed a brave and, you know, tenacious performance. And that, like, when you look at the kind of integrity and passion that she brings to her work, even in very small roles, like where I think are some thankless roles that she has turned into real gems, you know? And it just felt to me like, yeah, it was clear from the moment we talked to her that she was perfect for it. And we've never, now it's impossible to think of anybody else who could do it.
I thought she was incredible for sure. So I obviously not everybody has seen the film, and don't want to dive too deep into spoilers, but I want to kind of pick your brain, Julian, there with that ending, right? What made you shoot it from the outside, right? That ending, you shoot it from the outside instead of going with her where she's going and what she's about to do. What kind of gave you that perspective to end it that way instead of maybe something else?
I think it was about, I mean, primarily it was about where we wanted to place the emphasis for the audience. Because that same, again, spoiler alert, but I will try to keep it as vague as possible. That's an ending that is almost, in hindsight, it's a genre ending. It's very much a Western ending. But when John Wayne or Clint Eastwood or whoever does it, it means something else in our culture. And what we wanted to do was allow that to be the ending, but make it about her and not about the action of the end. And so I remember the moment that we came up with that ending. It felt to us to be the most honest ending in a way, even though it's terrible to say that. But the shot came along with the idea. As I recall, the idea of what the ending could do emerged from us at the same time as the shot. That was one of the earliest decisions we made about how to shoot something, and it was really a gut instinct. And slowly we started to understand why we had that instinct, and it made more and more sense. But that to me, like, the reason the shot works the way it does is it is all leading to this in a way that's supposed to feel inevitable. And the camera knows from the very beginning of the movie what's going to happen. And so that shot had to be as controlled and kind of disciplined as possible.
And just to jump in real quick, to me, that shot is, and I'm obviously not a cinema professor, but for me, it's the definition of psychological horror, which is things that's the horror that gets to me, not gore. It's the stuff that I don't see. It's the stuff that I can hear, and then my imagination kicks in. So for me, like, I remember us talking about that on the script level. Like, we're not going to, like, only she's going in that house. We're not going in with her. And then if we do go in with her, I think it becomes, I think for a lot of people, the ending is cathartic, but I don't think we wanted it to be like in the genre of Westerns, in the Western genre, we're going to see Clint Eastwood or whoever go in there and murder everyone. It's going to be like, yeah, rah, rah, rah. We're going to keep it pushing. And if we wanted this to obviously have impact, but also we didn't want to celebrate. We didn't want to celebrate what was happening, because at the end of the day, it still was, I don't know if wrong is the right word. Maybe it is, but it's still like, it's still
troubling.
It's troubling. That's it. It's still troubling.
We want it to be troubling. And like, and when John Wayne does it, it's not troubling. It's the right outcome because of the way our culture allows white men to behave.
Yeah.
And throughout the movie, we are taking all of these sort of familiar genre scene types, and then Thandiwe's in there now, and everything tips a different direction, and you become more aware of what your expectation was, that's the fun part of subverting the genre, is it makes people aware of their cultural expectations.
Yeah, I loved how it ended, and I love that shot. I just think it's something that, as even Shay said, it's like something that haunts you, right? You know what I mean? You walk away, it kind of haunts you, even with the crack open of the beer, which in my opinion was like the icing on the cake. But all right, one final question. I know this project took a little while. I know there was some adversity that you guys faced. And Shay, I'm going to ask you first, and then Julian, you could follow. What is something you learned about yourself during the making of this film?
The thing I learned was, as a creative, what I learned is to trust the audience, trust what I'm doing, because we were delicate, we really didn't want to spoon feed things to people. And people, could have given us notes and said, make this a little clearer. make this choice a little clearer, or, you know, make things more apparent. And for us, we were all, I think what I learned, you know, from working on this and from Julian and specifically is to like, we want people to feel things. We want people to experience things, not just see things. And in order to do that, that takes a lot of trust. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of work. And so that's what I learned as a creative from working on this film, especially because it took so long, you know, to make. I mean, we did face that adversity. Is to like believe in what you were doing and stick to it, no matter what.
Yeah, that's a big takeaway for me too. The experiment that we were taking on of less is more as our fundamental rule. It's so validating to, you know, see that it's getting a good response, because we really like trusting the audience was our foundational thing. And actually all the stuff we cut out in the edit was any moment where we were even slightly trying to explain things. But I think like my big takeaway, I mean, you're referring of course to the fact that we had to shut down for a year in the middle of the production because of the pandemic. We shot half of it, waited a year, shot the second half of it. That felt like the worst case scenario when it was happening. And it turned out to be one of the best things for the project. Mm-hmm. So like, I think a lot of people have had this experience during the pandemic, just in general, but specifically as a filmmaker, I have been thinking a lot about how the movie is going somewhere, you know, and it's really about taking care of the process. And you know, if the process gets taken care of, you will be able to surmount all of the obstacles that come along. And we were able to turn that year of kind of hiatus into an incredibly productive time for the movie that, without question, is such a better movie now because we had that time to reflect.